So yeah, we started a discussion apparently and didn't resolve it. So now that we have quorum, we might actually be able to get a bit further than Mike and I got last time. The
Don't count on that. I'm usually
let's
the
see.
Kelsey.
How does acceptable claim provisionally renamed to good claim? So yeah, that's one thing Mike and I did, I think, as a result of this discussion. We renamed acceptable claim, which was on the backlog. It wasn't in consensus anymore, to good claim. How does this fit into the picture of current consensus? We had quite a bit of agreement on what makes an acceptable claim. So how come this is not in the definition of, for example, usable claim? So to go over that, let me screen share what that means. So we have consensus on usable claim. Where can I drop this? Which we said is an immutable system claim. And I think a system claim is a claim. But if you recall, claim is very, very minimal. It can still be indexical. It can still be a lot of things. And to narrow that down, we originally had this thing called acceptable claim, which we now renamed as good claim. So yeah, that is basically the question. Where does this thing that we worked quite a bit on, and I think we have some type of consensus on, as you can see still. The only thing we changed is the name, so I maintained the checkboxes. How does that fit into a usable claim? Because I think what I implicitly wanted, of course, is that for the specific use case where you add something, I don't want it to be indexical. So non-indexicality is also a requirement for me of usable claim. But is that something we can find consensus on or not?
Just a bit of we said basically there's no non-indexicality, for example, may not be true for a candidate. The idea is many claims are usable, but then may drop out of the usable state because they're rejected, right? Candidate accepted or rejected, and rejected is not usable.
Accepted, rejected, and candidate have nothing to do with usable. We've made that orthogonal. All that matters is externally linkable and structurally linkable.
I think we had the notion that
we even specifically in the examples say that it can be either accepted or candidate.
Yeah,
like,
but I expected rejected to not be unusable, and I think we even said that last time. And now that's getting interesting. If
rejected is not defined, and if it's defined, it's most likely defined along the axis of candidate, accepted, and rejected. Yes. And the whole point of usable, why we introduced this, was that it was orthogonal to externally linkable. You can decide to have a candidate claim be externally linkable or not. That's what these definitions show here.
And you can decide it to be structurally linkable or not. But I think, but what I think is that, okay, maybe rejected is externally linkable. Fair enough. But okay, there is this notion where something can be used in a structure as a oppose or before we're sure it's good enough, before we're sure it's a good claim, it's a candidate. And then when we know it's not a good claim, then we should remove it from linkage or replace it or do something that I think even in the use cases, if I remember well, what can we do when something gets rejected? Let me just go back to the user stories.
But I think that's I mean, I agree, but that's not the issue I'm trying to address right now.
Okay, I may not be following what you're saying then.
Just like before, there was a lot of conversation and discussion about should a candidate claim be structurally linkable. You can argue should a rejected claim be structurally linkable, yes or no. We want to keep that discussion orthogonal. That's why we have usable claim. But regardless, if you add a claim, regardless of it being candidate, accepted, or yet still to be defined rejected, what is that claim? Is it the claim we define here?
Sorry, I'm trying to remember where we had spoken about usable. Let's look at structurally. Linkable. Okay.
Steven, could you repeat that last question?
So it's not about accepted and rejected. Remember that we separated that on purpose. Usable has nothing to do with accepted, rejected, or candidate.
Correct.
So it's about what a system claim is. A system claim right now is either so information that was submitted to the system as a domain type claim. Domain type claim is all of these. The earth is flat, but also this pie is delicious, including indexical references, etc. We introduced a more narrow definition at some point that is useful to refer to be used in arguments, clear which part, blah, blah, blah. We have this whole list of useful requirements. So my question is, isn't this the thing that we want to refer to in usable claim? Don't want a usable claim to be
good? No.
Yeah.
We
No,
would like
because-
it, but we don't want to require it. No.
Yeah, but that's why it's candidate and accepted. That's orthogonal.
Here is what we were looking. System, it's in system claim. I was looking for system claim.
A usable claim to me should be, the claim is referring to a system claim. It's a usable system claim.
Yeah, but what is a
And
system
it
claim?
doesn't have
That's
to
what
be a
we're
good
talking
claim.
about. Is a system claim just
Oh yeah,
any
usable
claim?
is a system claim. That's exactly, that's what I was remembering. Usable is defined as being an immutable system claim, and system claim is candidate or accepted. That means it doesn't include
Claim.
rejected.
Yeah. That's not what we're talking about. The fact that system claim refers to claim, not good claim.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's accidental. I don't think we consider
But that's not sure.
Well, I explicitly do not want to require a claim to be a good claim in order to.
No, but it's just like claim right now, just like a candidate claim can be by Viagra, right?
Yeah.
It's more like which domain type is it?
But what I'm saying, and I'm going back on that. In system claim, when we said either candidate or accepted, this was meant to rejected claims. Now, it won't be accepted, like by Viagra will not be accepted as a claim. It is a system claim while it's a candidate, but when the process decide that it's...
We're not talking about system claim. We're talking about claim. We're talking about the domain type claim. We're talking about what is it a candidate of?
Yes.
And so if
I'm talking about system claim, can I?
Okay, I'll have system claim open.
Okay, so system claim is there, and I think it was clear in my mind, and even in our discussion last time, that we said candidate or accepted was meant to exclude rejected, and we should have written it. Obviously, we're dumb not to. But if it's submitted as a claim, then rejected as not a claim, then it's not a system claim. It's not a usable claim, certainly. And we had said it can stop being usable because it goes from candidate to rejected.
What does that mean that it's not a system claim? I think a rejected claim is a system claim. I mean, what is the... What is the...
I think that that's an... I may be right. I may agree with you on that, Tim. I think it's more on the usable that I'd like to read to exclude the rejected than on the system claim. But that may be a separate conversation. Let's define rejected. Maybe that's worse. That's worth spending a few cycles on.
I mean, yes, but it's beyond the issue. It's rejected as what? What is it?
Yes, absolutely.
Type?
Absolutely.
Right now, that's claim. That's what I'm highlighting. That's nothing to do with
rejected is the opposite of accepted.
Yes.
What are the acceptance criteria of a usable claim? That's what we're talking about.
You said that that was something either we're not discussing or is something for each system to determine. Because again, depending on how we define things, I want candidate claims to automatically be accepted. Depends on what the implications are of being accepted. right?
But isn't
Yeah.
that what we
So-
define in claim? Are the acceptance criteria exactly in claim?
No, last time we said there's always a process of some kind. Process
Yeah,
is like the
there's a
most generic
process,
thing
but-
we came up with.
Okay, so in other words, a usable claim can be anything, because acceptance criteria can be, it needs to be 42. So then depending on the acceptance criteria, usable claim here in this user story can be 42, or how should I interpret this? No, exactly. So that obviously as part of this
Well, no,
non-usable claim, there's
no.
some entailing
no.
acceptance
I
criteria.
think- I
Taking
think
a
you're
step away from abstract definitions or whatever, I would want, for example, there to be a form where you submit some information as a claim. When you hit enter, this will be created in the system as a claim. And to me, it should already be usable. No further process or anything like that. It should
Yeah,
already
but
be
what
usable.
is the domain type claim? What are the expectations? Which guidelines are going to decide that this claim is going to be useful to submit it as to make it work? If all you can submit is
Okay.
42, in what way is this use
No,
case
no.
supported, for example?
We're trying to define some basic criteria for some of those types, including for claim, including for good claim. But I think we all agree accepted is accepted as a type. That means rejected
Yes.
means rejected as a type.
Exactly. So we're discussing
So
the type.
that's not in question. When system claim was written, maybe it's not a good or bad decision. We may review the decision, but I don't think it was accidental, as you say. When we said information that was submitted to the system as the
No,
domain
it isn't.
type,
It says as a claim. That's
Yes.
not, we said as a claim, and that domain type right now is this, and it has associated criteria.
Exactly. I agree totally. There's criteria, they're there, and that means something submitted, a candidate can either match or not match those criteria. Now,
Exactly.
I understand perfectly, Tim, when you say your process maybe assume matching until contested. I don't have a problem with that. It changes. That's a process. We have a process to go from candidate to accepted and or to rejected, and that state is not monotonic. We may go from accepted to rejected, or even from rejected to accepted. We may change our mind about whether a claim is good enough as a claim or good enough as a good claim, which is a separate issue with different criteria, right? But it's not monotonic in either case. And I think one thing we wanted to say, one thing I wanted to say, and here I'm not assuming consensus, when we said usable claim was a system claim, it's because for me, it did imply the very explicit notion that system is candidate or accepted, but not rejected. That means if something was used because it was accepted provisionally, as for example, a support of something else, and then the accepted claim becomes rejected, then it stops being usable, and we have to revise its status as a structurally linkable claim, and that means we have to revise the claims to which it's been structurally linked, such as oppose or support.
I'm not against that, but again, that's not the conversation, or at least not the topic that I wanted to raise.
Okay.
You want to define
It's the criteria,
what is-
exactly.
what is-
Criteria right
No, but
now.
that's wait. Those are two separate things, right?
Sure.
Like the definition or the meaning of claim as opposed to the criteria are separate things. And I would argue criteria is something we are going to have disagreements on until the end, and may need to be in our definitions, a flexible thing that we define per implementation or something.
But okay, yeah, we can do that, but then it's literally, like I said, criteria can be 42, and then we cannot discuss this user story because it's meaningless. If the criteria are fully undefined, this user story is fully meaningless. As a web author, I want to link to something with acceptance criteria fully undefined, so that my readers can support and oppose something, which is also, I mean, it becomes meaningless. The question what are the criteria needed to support that use case? That's why we're trying to define these criteria.
Yeah, I have a bit of, I'm not sure that the story is useless. There's a difference between formal criteria and informal criteria. Like we can have formal machine decidable criteria, or we can have intentions. And we can say, you know, this claim does not match intentions. And we can have a two-step process where we can start by.
And what are the intentions? That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, that's a perfectly valid.
So, right.
The intentions right now.
And when Tim says the
these.
criteria may differ, do you mean the formal criteria or the intentions? Questions to Tim.
Wait, when I say what? Which thing?
When you say the criteria will differ per implementation, which I agree totally with.
I mean the formal. Yeah.
Yes, but not necessarily the intention. And this is why.
Correct, which is why I was saying this is why I went along the path of, okay, let's define an acceptable and let's define the criteria, because to me, those may be heuristics, because we should be able to evolve a claim in that direction. Whereas, you know, another system may want to put that as like, it doesn't show up in the system until it matches all these things, right? But I agree on the criteria.
So the criteria are there for a reason, to make one the indexical one to make clear what I'm meaning, why this should be part of some heuristics at a minimum. Where was it? I think non-indexicality is mentioned somewhere here.
In good claim, yes.
Probably here.
No
And
indexical,
we're not linking the good claim to make clear why that's important. If you don't have non-indexical claims, then which is also visible to any web content linked to the same usable claim, they wouldn't know. Like if you have indexical references in a claim, like another web source using the same usable claim won't have those indexical references. So this use case is not supported because you can't support or oppose indexical stuff that's meaningless outside of the original content.
No. There I disagree, Stephen.
Okay.
This is why we have the next user story. I mean, I can say as a person.
First, clarify why you disagree, perhaps.
I'm getting there. That's what I was doing. Yes, thank you. I can, as a web author, link a claim, which is a crap claim, say this crap claim supports this other accepted, usable, good claim. And then in the next step, the moderator can say, hey, your claim is a crap claim, get that out of support, make it invisible. But I think as a web author, I can propose a crap claim. It's usable because it's still a candidate, and I can make it, it can support and oppose the blah, blah, blah. So the user story still makes sense, even if the, oh, sorry, that's a usable claim. No, it's the support oppose. Sorry, I got it wrong. I misread the link. I want to link to.
It's about the intent. It's exactly about trying to predict what will get rejected. What will get rejected to make this user story work. And what I'm saying is, well, indexical claims will get rejected, otherwise this user story won't work, which means that it will no longer be a usable claim because it will no longer be structurally linkable.
I understand. Well, okay, that's a good question. Okay, so the question, then would you mean this to be good claim instead of usable claim?
A usable claim right now refers to claim. I'm indeed saying that usable claim, which refers to system claim, that system claim should refer to good claim most likely, which we did not do, which we did talk about.
I don't think so. That's a totally different thing than what we were doing. Okay. You are trying to restrict linking to good claims, right?
No, I'm saying that the domain type you submit as are good claims. I'm saying that this user story, this use case will only work with good claims. So the intent when you submit something as a candidate is to submit as a good claim, meaning that.
Wait, why will it only work? Why will it only work with good claims?
I just want to run an example. If you have an indexical claim, it won't so that my readers can support and oppose the claim, the indexical claim in this case, which is also visible to any web content linking to the same indexical claim. If you have two different web pages, they both link to an indexical claim. This statement is bogus, for example. That's a claim according to our current acceptance criteria of a claim. They can add supporting and opposing arguments in a meaningful way because of the indexicality of this. A statement, a statement.
But again, Stephen,
I mean, I find it weird. I find it's weird that you're trying to shoehorn certain qualities that are not enforceable by a system. It's kind of like saying, as a web author, I want to create blog posts that are going to win me the Nobel Prize in Literature. It's like, okay,
that's why we have the
you want that, but you may not be qualified
process
to do that, right? You may not, as a web author, you may not think clearly enough to, or understand the system clearly enough to submit a non-indexable claim that can be seen by everybody. So you start off with,
that's why we
your
have
intention is that, but
exactly, and the intention is a domain type. If the intention is not there, it's never going to happen, and then you can have a community that doesn't even know what the acceptance criteria are, try to evaluate it in the first place because the intention is never formalized anywhere.
But you have well,
stated versus formalized, please. Okay. We agree that ideally we want people to refer to good claims. Accepted.
I don't know
claims.
whether we agree on that. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I agree that the ideal is we want people to link to accepted good claims. What I'm saying is the system will have candidate good claims at some point. The question is, do we allow people to link to candidate good claims, which may end up being rejected good claims, i.e. bad claims? And do we allow them to link to that in the meantime? And do we, and if so, what happens when they are rejected?
Again,
I'm saying the user story should apply to either candidate or accepted, and hence probably even
that's what system claim does. That is the main reason we introduce system claim.
Yes.
System claim is candidate or accepted. That's not the issue. The issue is candidate or accepted what, which is claim right now and not good claim.
Yeah, no, I understand your issue. Yes, but
can you please show me again the definition of candidate?
That's fine. Yeah.
Candidate and accepted all refers to a domain type. That my biggest discussion here is what is a domain type? What are the criteria of domain type that the use case of external linking requires? Question. And I'm saying we just link to claim because we had consensus on that, but what we actually need is the good claim, which we also previously had consensus on was valid in some use cases. And I'm arguing it's valid in this use case because non-indexicality is needed. I'm not saying that all claims in any argument system need to be non-indexical. I'm saying for this user story, they need to be non-indexical. It's perfectly fine to have indexical claims, but that's a different user story and that probably needs a different name.
Okay. My question, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you wanted, but I think we're missing a bit of the sequence of operation. Let me put it this way. Mm-hmm. The question is, do we allow people to link to candidates?
That's not the question at all.
It is relevant. Because if we allow people to link to candidates, which is, and let's say candidate good claims, let's say I agree with you, let's put good claim instead of claim, but we allow people to link to candidate good claims. At some point, this candidate good claim may go to the rejected good claim, at which point it's not a system claim. It's not a good claim because I think accepted, good claim means accepted as good claim. Though we may differ on that.
You're making a lot of assumptions already. So you just decided.
I'm checking that one. So
no, for me, if you would ask me, but again, reject is not defined. That's why we try to avoid using that in discussions. But if we would define rejected, I would probably have a system claim, which is either candidate accepted or rejected.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's for me.
You're already saying, just like I did before, that I only want accepted claims to be structurally linkable. You're already deciding and defining that rejected claims are not structurally linkable. You're doing the exact same thing as I did before we accepted us.
Yeah.
And we wanted to keep that orthogonal. We want the system to be able to decide whether or not a rejected or an accepted or a candidate is externally linkable. That's not the current discussion. The
Okay,
current
okay,
discussion is what is the domain type needed for this user story?
Yes.
Well, but look, you've defined good claim, right? So we assume that there are claims in the system that are a good claim. We assume there are also claims in the system that are not good claims, right? There's candidate claims or whatever that aren't, right? The existence of good claims already supports your use case. The fact that there are bad claims doesn't invalidate your use case. The user wants to do these things. So the user finds a good claim and
You didn't hear me,
it.
Timothy. Good depends on the domain type you're trying to submit as.
No.
Good. No, it is. Like, I'm fully on board with having user stories where a good claim, because you're not looking at the requirements right now, where a good claim can be indexical, like I said before. It could be like a contextual good claim, for example. I am gonna guess indexicality is allowed because you have the full context incorporated. We haven't defined that. But the whole question is, what is a claim and what is a good claim? Potato claim, remember?
Yeah, I remember potato claim. Okay, first, when you say good claim is not a category, I'm really, really puzzled. Like we said, accepted as is accepted as a category, right? Is that what we mean by category? Accepted as something.
A domain type, that's in the
domain type. Thank you. I was looking for the term. And you're saying good claim is not a domain type? When you say
it is a domain type, but we link to claim, which is a domain type.
Yeah, but that's not the question. Is good claim a domain type?
Yes.
Okay, because you said no just seconds ago and I got confused. Okay, good. Good claim is a domain type. We agree on that, or you and I at least. That means there are good claim candidates, accepted good claims, and I would argue rejected good claims.
Exactly.
We agree on that. And I agree there's a bit of ambiguity in the term system claim when the way it was defined, and maybe it's not the good word, maybe it's not the right word, because I think the reason we introduced system originally was to distinguish it from claims that were not yet in the system, because claim could not be in the system.
I think we introduced it primarily since we want to represent a unified type. So we wanted to represent both candidate and accepted, which were the only two things we defined so far, claims.
No. Not putting rejected in there was intentional. Now I'm thinking maybe we need two terms. Maybe we need one which is,
as you say, we haven't defined rejected. We can.
Can I do it? Let's do it. It'll take 2 seconds and it'll be done.
We can, but it's not the source of contention.
No, but it is. I mean, if you're going to stop me from using rejected, it becomes a source of blockage. I agree it's not the source of blockage. If you'll allow, either you allow me to use it intuitively or let's go through the process of defining it. But I need to use it now.
Okay. I'll link to the undefined term then. Where do you want to add it?
Okay, what I'm saying is we need two terms. For a system type, there's a system entity that is an entity intended to be that system type, which may be candidate accepted or rejected, and was entered in the system. That's what we mean by, maybe it means entered or in the system. I'm trying to find a good word for that, right? That's one concept. And I'm not presuming which one we want to use for system.
Submitted, maybe.
What?
Submitted.
Submitted sounds good. I'm happy with submitted. Okay, so there's submitted claims, for example, submitted X, that's an adjective. And that would include candidates accepted, rejected. And
it also includes rejected, you say?
Yeah, I'm saying there's one category, there's one need for the category that includes rejected, and there's another need for the category that is just candidate or accepted and doesn't include rejected. We need names for these two categories because they're both useful. And I think that what we were trying to say is, in some systems, candidates may be structurally linkable, and of course accepted are structurally linkable. That means any accepted or or candidate should be structurally linkable, but not rejected, because then we should review the link and invalidate the link, because we don't want rejected doodads in a link. Whereas externally linkable, the idea is, I think, again, some system may allow externally linking to a candidate. And if the candidate is later rejected, we don't want the link to become meaningless. We just want the link to point to the thing and say, this was decided to be meaningless through the process. And then it's invalidates the link in the linking system, which is another story. But the category of these things which are externally linkable is not coincident, because it does include rejected things. Whereas a structurally linkable, it should not include the rejected types. It should not include the rejected.
Well, that's a system decision. That's a system decision you're deciding right now. Just like I before was arguing, and to a degree still I'm arguing that candidates shouldn't be structurally linkable. So I mean,
yeah,
why
I agree. It's a system decision. Fair enough.
So,
fair enough.
Why not leave that orthogonal?
What I'm saying is the category of accepted or candidate is a category that some systems will want to use, just as the category of only accepted is a category that some system will want to use for certain decisions.
That was your intent with system claims, what you're saying.
What I'm saying is, I thought system claims was to be the accepted or candidate category, and now you're saying, no, you want it to be accepted or candidate or rejected category. I don't care, but we need the two words. Which one is which word? I don't care. But
I don't care
both.
either, because that's not, I mean.
But we need both terms.
I honestly don't care either, because that's, again, not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the domain type, not about the.
I'm aware, but I'm saying in all cases, you're saying, let's go back to the user story now. When you say usable claim in the user story.
Yes.
Right now.
Which domain type is claim here?
Yeah. Now, I'm happy with either claim or good claim, but the question is, do you allow candidates in there?
It's orthogonal. The whole point of introducing usable was that it was orthogonal. But okay, you're introducing now that you want to make a definitional system decision that you say that usable always has to be candidate or accepted. That's your point, right?
No, that's not my point. Okay, we defined usable in a way that uses system claim, and system claim was written a certain way. And again, there's two concepts, and both concepts can be argued. I'm not sure what I understand by usable anymore, to be honest, because that's a system decision, as you say. The question is,
let's go back to the definition. An immutable system claim, which is externally linkable and structurally linkable. That's what a usable claim is.
Okay.
And therefore it excludes rejected, right? Because
we haven't defined rejected.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's the opposite of accepted.
It's something which went through the process.
There must be something
usable
intentionally.
Usable intentionally left accepted and candidate open. If you look at the two definitions, an accepted claim, which can be used as a supporting claim, the earth is not flat. A candidate claim, for example, by Viagra, because the whole candidate and accepted
as was
parallel to this.
Accepted as was defined. We can do rejected as.
It is defined, but the whole point of the definition of usable claim, of decoupling the dimension of acceptance and candidate, was to leave that open so the system can decide whether or not it is externally linkable. What mattered was that it was externally and structurally linkable.
I got it, yes.
But now you're arguing we should, again, in system claim, link it to narrow it down to only candidate or accepted, whereas.
No, I get your point. I get your point. And you know what? I am buying. Let's add rejected to this one.
Once we add rejected, yes, that for me keeps the language more open.
Yeah, and then I'll want a different term
Yes.
for system claim. But then the question, and I would say for me, rejected claims are not usable. They're externally linkable, but not
they're
structurally
often
linkable.
they're in a candidate mode, and they're referenced somehow, and then
Yeah.
they get rejected. So the
Yeah.
reference probably still exists.
The external reference still exists, and that's why I'm saying rejected claims are still externally linkable, but they're not structurally linkable because I would
No,
invalidate
but
the
what he's
links.
saying, is that by having previously been in another state, they have probably previously been structurally linked.
That's absolutely
And
correct.
once they're rejected,
It means you need
like
to
my
update.
intuition would be once it's rejected, previous structural links still exist, but you're not allowed to add new structural links. That's
And
how I would normally do it.
that-
But
Correct. Plus, I would also mark all structural links as invalidated. I would give obsolete marker to the old structural links.
I'm okay with that. So
Good.
I think we can even define that as is later, but it doesn't resolve the issue of what the requirements of acceptance or rejection are.
Let's look at the accepted definition, 2 seconds, because really this should take 2 seconds.
There's no requirements in there.
No, as intended. The candidate contribution what has been approved by something for that domain type. So we can take this exact sentence, this exact paragraph, replace approved by rejected, and make that the rejected definition. And then we may flip some of the examples and it'll be done. You know what? Let me do it.
Yeah, go ahead. I already created rejected as in the undefined list.
Oh, yes. A candidate contribution, what has this been?
Okay. You're talking while typing, and that mutes you again. I'm still thinking of the whole domain type thing, like maybe we have data that becomes an instance of a domain type over time if people refine it or whatever. And if it's just submitted and it, no?
Yeah,
But
of course. That's the whole thing. With
yeah, I'm just trying
accepted
to understand the problem here.
The problem is what I started with 40 minutes ago. What is the domain type needed for this user story?
Read with you that
Yes, and we have and a domain type is not a data type, else it would just be a string, but it's something with constraints, and you're trying to figure out what these constraints are, right?
Exactly. What are the constraints to make this work?
so that's the purpose of defining good claim, was to make it match this specific use case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and I agree with that. I did say I agree with that. Let's use good
Okay,
claim
let's
then.
take a step. How about we call it potato claim, and then let's talk about which criteria we can agree on that.
Well, I would call
I would say the following. Here's my hesitancy is I think this criteria is not required, as opposed it's intentional, as Marc-Antoine said, where like I would want a system where a candidate claim could go through all these steps and the person does it. It just doesn't have the intentional result. But we could think about and discuss what makes for the minimum set of requirements that this would work as intended, right? And that could be a name for this.
That's a domain type.
Yeah.
That's a domain type.
Yeah, I don't know
The
if
type we link to now is claim and not good claim. Good claim, by the way, was a horrible name, as this past 40 minutes has shown. So we definitely need to rephrase that. And given the user story here, I would probably say something like,
give it a temporary name of user story one claim. User story one claim. Let's start with that, and then we'll come up with something and see if it's reusable in other places. It might come to have some sort of larger meaning, right?
But I mean, the whole point here is really that it can be reused in different contexts.
Right, I understand.
The
Part
point
of
with-
the user story is that it makes sense outside of the context of the
Yes.
block.
So if we have a good adjective for that, that would be wonderful.
the
It
point.
may be non-indexical, right?
Maybe
I keep
non-indexical
talking
is
over you. Go, Mark, on phone, sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't mind good claim, by the way, but my problem is in the user story, and maybe they should be two different user story. Maybe we should have one user story with accepted good claim and one with candidate good claim. And then the second story would be some systems would allow it, some wouldn't. But the usable claim notion for me is one that should not include rejected. Whereas here, I don't really want usable claim. I want candidate or accepted, but maybe, as I said, I'm happily willing to split it into user story. We could say accepted
I
good
think
claim.
we have more or less consensus on that. We definitely don't want rejected claims to be structurally linkable. So I think it would be fine to just refer like usable claim to either a candidate or a accepted
which is what we had in system claim, by the way. And then there's two definitions of system claim, as I said, and we kind of got.
No,
by the way,
system claim was also added because we needed the submission process to make clear that it's in the system.
Yep. I agree. But I'm saying it was written, the excluding rejected was deliberate at the time. And now I'm finding it's confusing. Let's have the two definitions clear in this thing. I finished writing the rejected, by the way. It's simple. We could just.
A candidate contribution, once it has been rejected, why not an accepted contribution? Are you saying that an accepted thing can never be rejected?
I'm not saying that, but it started as candidate probably, but you're right. Let me add accepted. You're absolutely right. Thank you.
Yeah, as written, candidate claim is, or candidate whatever, is not a superset of accepted.
That's why I also thought, like, isn't rejected everything that's neither a candidate nor accepted?
Until we introduce yet another adjective in the process, yeah.
Formerly candidate or accepted as contribution, once been rejected.
Yes. Wait, a domain type without an acceptance. Does the second paragraph work?
I think so, but I'm willing, open to
Trying to
improvements.
understand it. A domain type without acceptance process.
Can be, or I could say can be stated to be accepted, parenthesis, not rejected. I think
Can we
nothing
resolve
is
some-
rejected at first.
Can we resolve some negations in this sentence?
Yeah, but what I'm reading is that, yeah, nothing is rejected at first. That's a definition, because you say it needs to be first a candidate accepted. So
yeah,
I would just drop it, to be honest. I think
Okay,
that was more relevant.
something. Yeah, right. It
I'm happy to
basically
drop it.
means it basically translates to something without an acceptance process. Like a system without a process cannot have rejected claims.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I mean,
That's
I
what it
think
says.
you can't have, well, you can't have rejected unless something goes through a rejection process, right? And same things as accepted. If you don't have accepted criterion, you don't have an exception.
But that's what we explicitly defined. We said, like, if there's no process, then it's automatically accepted.
yes,
that
that was
how we
there.
defined it?
I took that from the accepted.
Yeah, but does it apply to this one? Is what
Yes.
you're really trying to say? Domain type without an acceptance process cannot be rejected.
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Is
I
that
think that's correct. I think so.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And the match does not match. I
No.
basically flipped them.
No hard disagree on that. The sun is bright would not be accepted as well. Would not be, but no, huh? Oh, would be rejected. You want to say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it was a copy paste. Yeah.
No, it wasn't. I did flip the negation, but
Huh?
anyway, sure, it's not. And then the same below.
Is it correct? The sun is bright would be rejected.
Okay, I'll do it. Just I was
Yeah, okay.
using not accepted. The bivagra
Would be rejected as a
sun is
claim.
bright. Right.
You used not accepted again. Why are you using
Oh,
accepted
it's
again?
because I thought I had the latest version.
Oops.
And I've done this one and probably did, but I didn't catch it when I started editing for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Everyone on board with this?
I saw Felix say yes, so
Yes.
clicking. Tim?
Yeah, I'm not sure. The one question is on the first example. The sun is bright would be rejected as a well-formed argument. That's why would it be rejected? Is just because the sun it's not including the sun is bright, therefore something, or
Yeah, it's
something
it's a
because the sun
claim.
is
It's not
bright?
it's not an argument.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Then add that in between brackets like we usually do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. To clarify.
Claim, not an argument. I'm adding it already. Yeah. Conflict. All good now?
I'm aligned.
Yep,
Okay.
sounds good.
Yay.
Okay.
So now we can go
5
back to
minutes.
system claim.
Yes. So then the question is, do we or don't we want to include rejected in here? I'm
I'm
fine
saying-
either way.
Yes, I do.
Let's put it in system and let's have another name for candidate or accepted. So let's put it in system claim.
And in that sense, if we're going to define system, then if system is the adjective you intended before, then a system
Yes.
claim would be more correctly stated as
An adjective, I agree. And then the question is, does usable is based on system claim, and does it still include rejected? And that's really the question. Or should we make an exception?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd
A
say
non-rejected system claim.
I'd say it's still included, but the system may prevent users from forming new links, these kinds of claims, but old links may still exist, even
Then
though they're
maybe
invalidated.
Maybe we should then put that in the definition of structurally linkable.
Before we do that, can we please just decide whether or not this is a
We can
potato
put good
claim or a
claim.
user story one claim or not?
Yes, I agree. I'm happy to change that to good claim.
I'm not aligned on good claim. What is good claim?
Oh, one second. Maybe we should need, there's system, maybe there's usable claim and there's usable good claim. Maybe they're distinct.
Exactly.
Okay.
Can you repeat that, Marc-Antoine, please?
There's two concepts. There's usable claim and there's usable good claim. I'm still happy with good claim, by the way.
It sounds like actually aiming towards usable as an adjective again.
Yep. Adjectives were the greatest win in this process.
Yes, but it keeps sidestepping from what I wanted to talk about for months, which is the domain type.
Yeah, but I think it's useful and necessary, and we should have had this all along, because the actual discussion of how we want to design the system is going to be, I want claims to be usable at this point. I want them to be rejected at this point. I want them to be, so we need the adjectives to.
Yeah, but we also need the nouns, because we never define the nouns.
Right.
And we don't know what needs acceptance or rejection. And whether or not you want it to be linkable or structurally linkable and all that stuff depends on what the domain type is most likely.
No, I agree with that, but and that's why I'm still happy with good claim as good claim. I don't have a better name to offer. I know it's a it's a terrible name.
Context-free claim I like, because it is free of context.
Then maybe let's use context-free as an adjective, because it would apply to arguments. It would apply maybe even to entities.
I don't know.
Grammars. Yeah.
I mean, that's a bit premature. We can maybe later split it up as an adjective, but the point is we do have a lot of examples here that are claims. So even if it becomes an adjective, we can still keep this.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there are things in there that I don't agree with as being claims. I mean, they're conceptually claims in some ways, but I wouldn't want them to be a system claim.
Well, they would not an acceptance.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be.
You want them to be rejected as system claims.
Exactly, or the system wouldn't support adding images, but that's not.
That's another
really,
concern.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so I mean, what is the definition of claim that we have there?
It's a restriction on claims, which basically is about saying the system.
No. What is our definition for claim?
The broadest context possible. A representation that makes a claim, and it supports compounds, it supports math, it supports images.
Okay.
You can disagree or agree with.
It's indexical. Yeah, anything you can disagree with or agree with as a whole. That's how we define it, regardless of what expect opinion, etc.
Yeah, so then I'm not so sure I agree with the good claim or potato claim definition, because I'm not sure what it's being introduced for. If it's being introduced specifically for user story one, right? It's the minimum requirements for user story one to work as intended. Then let's call it user story one claim, and let's figure out that criteria, and I'm cool with that. It makes sense to me to be defining it there, but
Okay, I think that there is work on defining what's a good claim that go beyond user story one, meaning there's a lot of
but
not good claims that fits user story one, and I'm saying if user story one could work with claim, it's just not very good. We've got a lot of non-good claims in there.
It doesn't work as intended, right?
Exactly.
And this is where I say, there's use for other improvements on claim. I would want to maybe define ideal claim as a concept which is, matches all the best criteria that we want, right? But it doesn't have to be an ideal claim to work for user story one.
But the criteria depend on the use case.
But what I'm saying is this is even more why I want this to be adjective based, because what is it, for example, you said, it could be indexical, could be compound. Do you want good claims or potato claims to not be user story one claims? Okay, fair. Do you want them to be non-compound? We may disagree on that. Do you want them to be context-free as a thing? What are parts? What I'm saying is
exactly what we need to try to agree on.
Exactly.
Right, that's what this conversation is.
That's the conversation is. But what I'm saying is it'll be easier if each of those criteria is an adjective, and then we'll say, which of those adjectives apply are necessary for user story 1 to work well. But it means each of those criteria should be a separate adjective.
No, but I think they'll evolve in the discussion. That'll be part of the work of defining this thing, is exactly what I was saying. The adjectives are useful for the debate. And so we'll introduce an adjective and say, okay, well, I define it like that. And then we'll come back to use the story 1 claim and debate whether it's required, right? I hit my hard limit, my other meeting's starting. If I had a day show, I would say tomorrow would be, let's continue with this, because we're just at the precipice of what Stephen wanted to do. I guess it's up to Felix what he wants to do, but unfortunately I gotta go now.
Okay.
Bye, Tim.
Bye, Tim.
Thanks,
See
everybody.
you maybe tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Do we want to add a reference to US1 claim then? Or
Not yet. Let's wait, because we may have a better name.
yeah, for me, it's really just, what did we say? It's useful to be used in arguments by anyone because it's non-indexical, like in multiple arguments. I would even say reusable claim or something like that.
Which claims are not useful to refer to?
No,
I mean,
it's
that's
not about
probably
referring,
also.
it's not to refer, it's which claims are claims you can use in multiple arguments in different contexts. That's what this is aiming for.
Okay, that was not clear to me.
That's so that my readers can store and oppose a usable claim, which is also visible to any other web content linking to the same claim. So the whole point here is that you don't make the same claim over and over again in different contexts, which would make a different claim. So you want to centralize that in a reusable claim. I would go for reusable claim or something along those lines.
And then the question is, what makes it reusable? And then we can speak about
non-indexicality, yeah. And then indeed, whether or not it can be translated to a declarative sentence is something we seem to agree on. But it might be orthogonal to non-indexicality indeed.
It is. It can be interpreted as a whole.
That is needed for reusability, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe indeed next up we can talk about non-indexical and then try to copy paste these two in there.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Okay.
Sorry, that's more painful than I expected it to be, but
yeah, well, domain types are tricky.
domain types are tricky. But there was really, I really think I may want to introduce something for the candidate or accepted, provisionally usable, maybe something like that.
You can, but it's just keep sidestepping from the user story. I mean, it's a totally separate discussion, in my opinion.
I'm really thinking it would be a good idea to split the user story, to say that there's one for accepted good claims and one for candidate good claims.
Sorry, but to me, it's really meaningless to talk about acceptance or rejection if you don't know the criteria you're talking about.
Let me disagree.
I mean, in the abstract sense, you can talk about that, but why are we talking about some process of and requirements of what the result is of rejection if you don't even know what it is you're rejecting in the first place?
What I'm saying,
wouldn't you argue that whether you're rejecting a submission to a Eurosong festival, that has different requirements in terms of structural linkability, for example, than rejecting some claim submitted to an argument repository? I mean, why are we talking about it in the abstract sense?
Because of the question I asked, which is, do we allow to link to candidates? And I think the answer to that is yes. But
I think it depends on what the domain type is. That's what I'm arguing for.
Right, and I don't, okay, and I don't think so. I don't think it depends on the domain type. I think I would allow linking to candidates in general.
Yeah, probably.
But or maybe not.
Structural linking.
External linking, not structural linking.
Probably I would allow external link. I didn't get the introduction of externally linkable, to be honest, because yes, anything in the system you probably want to link to externally. Otherwise, it goes into a deep dark hole and never to be seen again. What's the point?
The point is, does it have, is there, I know, okay, that's interesting. I disagree with that. If something is only represented in UX as some interface element without an identifier, without an identity, you'll never know if it's the same, is it the same entity or not, because you don't have an identifier. I don't think it's, I don't think it's linkable. It's not usably externally linkable. And the question is, you need to have a way to refer to it in a non-ambiguous fashion. If all you have is a digested view, which is not guaranteed to be unique, even though there's an underlying unique entity, of course, then it's not externally linkable.
Uniqueness is in no way guaranteed. Uniqueness depends fully on the system.
No, what I'm saying is, if in a given system, you
Yes.
have unique entities, they're
Yeah.
unique in that system, but the only way you have access to them is as UX elements whose representation is not in one-to-one correspondence with the unique elements in the underlying system. Then those elements in the underlying system are not externally linkable. Simple.
Okay, besides
if you don't,
if
if you don't expose the ideas, you mean?
Yeah.
Right?
If you don't expose the IDs, all you expose is a digest, but the digest doesn't allow you to uniquely identify the underlying entity. And you have no access to the underlying entity. The
If an
digest
API
uses enough
only
information.
if an API only returns the text of the claims but not the IDs, then you
Yeah, but
cannot do
based on
anything with
what
them.
do you return something that isn't that always on some type of ID?
Yeah, you could say latest claim
You
or
could,
whatever.
yeah, you could decide to, oh, you don't have access, so all you get is XXX and no information. Then it's not linkable to you. It's what I'm saying is making something externally linkable is work the system has to do and may choose to not do or may choose to work against. That's I don't have access to the index entries in the Google index.
No, but I mean, all user stories by its very nature are things that users have access to. So all of the things in the user stories, that's what I'm saying, will be externally linkable or should be.
Ah, interesting. But well, yes and no, because some of the user stories are about manipulating entities, but that doesn't mean that the entity is externally linkable, as I'm saying. You may be manipulating those entities using the system's UX, but that doesn't mean that it's possible to link to it in a unique fashion because you don't know which entity you're manipulating in the moment you're manipulating it.
Yeah.
It's a bit theoretical, I admit.
It is. I don't think it's relevant. I think I vaguely know what you mean, but I mean, again, that's not where any disagreement lies at this point. It's about the acceptance criteria and about the actual requirements for that user story.
And I still maintain that the notion of our candidates, like, will we encourage, like, maybe it's externally linkable in the abstract, but we want to discourage it. And to be honest, I think I want to allow it, but I'm not even 100% sure. But I think the question is important. The question is, are candidates, will we allow linking between candidates that may...
Structurally linkable, or do you mean, what do you mean by between? Remember that we actually haven't defined structurally linkable. Maybe I'll bump that one up. That's more important.
Yeah, I didn't mean external, by the way, here, but...
And what do you mean by between?
I meant between systems in this case. I didn't finish my sentence. And then, yeah, there is also the question of structural linkable. I think it is important to allow linking to candidates because like the user story as written was about connect to an existing claim, and then we can wait until the claim is accepted. Whereas, though again, in Tim's case, the acceptance is automatic. Whereas I think there's another user story, and I think we even have it somewhere, let me check, where we say, I want to link to my submission of the claim I'm making in this current web page. I'm a web author, I'm inserting a claim in my web page, and at the same time I'm submitting it, and I want to point to my submission in the system. And I think that's a slightly different but valid use case, and it means we have to have external linkability because of that admittedly different use case.
Even if it was rejected.
Yeah, isn't it
What?
more a question of identity, like whether or not the submitted claim has the same identity than the one that eventually gets accepted or not?
Whether the submitted claim has the same, and that's an interesting separate question. I would tend to say yes, but it's a good point.
I mean,
okay,
the submission itself, the act of submission can get its own ID.
Yeah, and certainly we want the link to remain persistent, even if it changes identity. We want the link to still work. You know, I submitted, it gets accepted. I shouldn't have to revise my link.
Exactly.
So yeah, I would say it has
That's
the same identity.
that's why I originally wanted only to be able to do that with already accepted claims that are then immutable. So you assume that has been accepted and it will always be there. That was part of the reason why I wanted that.
And that's what I'm saying is, as a web author, I may want to submit and link at the same time.
Yeah. But yeah, so you want to create a graph and an argument tree, but then, I mean, it essentially means if it will get rejected, the article and the structure you made
Yeah.
won't support a use case. So why not? That means you need to rework your article.
No, what it means is my page will still link to the rejected claim, except now, you know, somebody visits my page.
But so the use case is so that is no longer supported, because the rejected ones, people can't add supporting and opposing arguments to. And the whole point was that you can pull in your audience to add argumentation to your arguments.
That's
The
absolutely
point is
correct.
that only works if it's accepted, if it fits the criteria. That's why I originally made it part of it.
However, no, good point, good conversation. But if it's rejected, maybe the person rejecting it will say, oh, this may mean that point, that accepted claim. It's just a bad formulation of this good accepted claim. And then there's a pointer to that one, and then people could argue about that one.
Yeah, but then, then you still...
And then you'd probably want to revise your page.
Exactly.
Again. But
so I think that for me, the use case is more you first add your arguments separately. Once it has been accepted and it becomes immutable, that's when you start linking to it. That's how I saw it. Right. But yeah, you can envision use cases where you want to draft an argument tree and already link to it, and then maybe automatically update the identities with all the accepted ones, or God knows what, or I don't know. But
what I would do is keep the links, and if they're accepted, which is the usual path, then I have nothing to do, and I only have to. And even if they're rejected, the link will send to, okay, here's a rejected page, but here's a link to the most likely accepted equivalent argument, and then you go there. So
an automatic, the ID of accept claims becomes the same as a candidate ID, but if
if it's rejected, then we can look at, are there plausible equivalent accepted claims? And that would be a list of links. And then as the author, I would see this and say, okay, I have to pick one of those.
Links. Yeah.
But in the base case, I don't have to update my links.
But yeah, I mean, those are separate use cases, exactly. And that's why I'm saying to support a use case where people can comment, there's a separate use case than where you can already write an article, but people can comment that it still needs to be accepted in a way. Because the one use case will require you to potentially update the link later. The other one is done. It's immutable.
I
Well,
heard-
then it may maybe still be. No. Sorry, the whether or not there's better claims in the other sense of like less ambiguous is a different type of rejection, right? That's refinement or whatever. So yeah.
And you're right on the point that it may be accepted, but then refined later. And then, but the question is, when you say we have to
But it
update
would still be a
links,
good claim, or a potato claim, or a user story one claim. That's my point. It would still fit all those criteria, so it wouldn't be rejected as a user story one claim. What would happen is there would be, well, unless it maybe is, but that would be, and it would be a rejection of user one criteria. What I'm saying is there's a different reason, like this claim's too ambiguous is a different type of rejection. It's a different domain type that I want to name differently than a rejection of a user story one claim. So those are two separate use cases.
I see what you're saying, but what I'm saying is good point, and I absolutely see what I appreciate what you're saying there. But I'm saying the mechanism in both cases can be, there's a mechanism of repair that is not the same repair, but that can be applied to both cases. I can repair an ambiguous by being more precise. I can repair a non-indexical by adding a plausible indexical non-indexical reference. Sorry, I can repair an indexical by making it non-indexical.
Yeah, but the biggest difference is in one case you're more likely to agree. Yeah, of course, this is indexical. I mean, and the edit doesn't go against it's just more work. It doesn't go in against the intentions of the original claim you added. Whereas the latter, there is a likelihood you'll disagree with the more precise or the whatever, and you want to retain your old claim.
Yeah,
I might still want to have the discussion about the old claim, even though the canonical debater, whoever has decided there's a better, less ambiguous, less contrived, whatever claim out there to be talking about. And that's why it's a different user story. And I would definitely treat them different. And I, for one, would argue I still want to be able to add supporting and opposing arguments, even to claims that have better revisions as
but I agree there's a different user story in what happens to the claim after it's rejected in either case, totally. But I don't think it makes for a different user story of linking. What I'm saying is you're linking to something, the thing gets obsoleted, and then what happens next is, yes, that is a different user story. The thing gets obsoleted or not, of course. What happens if it gets obsoleted, if and when, then that's different. But and it doesn't even change the so that, because whatever the mechanism for repair, you still want to have to argue about the claim either in its original or updated form. And if the original form is not good enough, is not structurally.
I think it's different because you cannot meaningfully argue about an indexical claim. It doesn't fit the. I mean, why would you allow adding supporting and opposing arguments to an indexical claim?
I'm not saying I would. I'm not saying I would.
But isn't that then a different?
It's but what I'm saying is there's a different user story downstream, but upstream, you're proposing something to be debated, then that thing gets accepted or rejected or refined for different reasons. And in many cases, it will be refined. And in some cases, there you're right, the refinement will or will not allow the original to remain usable. But in either case, we will probably promote people going to the newer version and to have the discussion there. The only difference is, do we allow or not discussion on the original? But I'm not saying, I'm saying that does not make a different user story on the proposal process. It makes a user story on traversing the claim and using it. It's the so that is another user story. And it doesn't change the intent of the so that it will be treated differently in those two downstream user stories.
I think it will, because first of all, you're already seemingly assuming here that there's only one improved version of the claim. So one of my arguments is that different communities might decide on different
yes, that's correct.
better claims to talk about.
Yep. But that could also be true of indexicality. We may disagree about what the pronoun was referring to in the original text. It can happen.
But it can happen, but there is less room for disagreement, so there's less need to support disagreement about that. But yes, of course, it can happen.
So I'm saying these are not essentially different. I agree there's different set of probabilities, but
in theory, they're not different. In practice, I would argue they are extremely different.
As I said, the difference is in the downstream user story, not in the chief user story. The intent is the same. And how the intent will be realized differs, but the intent is the same. That means the submission and the linking user story is the same. The traversing the link is a different user story in either case.
No, I still would. I mean, again, for me, for example, in the former case, I would just have mutable state. Yeah, sure, you might be able to maintain every single edit on its way to making it non-indexical, and people will maybe not capitalize punctuation. Like there will be tiny things to clean up. I mean, sure, you can treat them the same and link each of the old ones to the new one and the new one and the new one and allow linking to all of them, and treat it the exact same way as having an usable claim that becomes structurally linkable, that is non-indexical, that then becomes more precise and maybe more precise and more precise. These are much more meaningful, different user stories why you want to link to these than why you would want to link to individual edits. Sure, in its abstract sense, it's the same, but implementation-wise, for example, and from a user experience perspective, I would treat them entirely different.
But what I'm saying
that's why you have Control-Z in an editor, but you commit every now and then bigger chunks. That's why you don't show all commits. I mean,
I see what you're saying there, but what I'm saying is this very real difference, which indeed creates different user stories, is in the usage of the link, not in the creation of the link. We're discussing user story one. User story one is about link creation, and it's not about link usage. There is so that link usage, but so that link usage, of course, refers to two distinct user stories, as you point out, but that does not split user story one. It splits user story two. I may want to traverse that link to discuss the thing. And yes, there's two different subcases there, which are different user stories. I'm not arguing with that. But I'm saying that does not split user story one, because the intent is the same anyway, even though it's realized in totally different fashions.
I think it's a different domain type.
And that's why I was saying, should we split user story one? And I waver on this one. I'm not going to. I do think there's a benefit to splitting them, in that some systems may allow one story and not the other, and that may be a good enough reason to split the story. For me, the story is structurally identical at that level, not at the downstream one using the link, but at the submitting the link, it's for me structurally identical. But maybe it's worth splitting to make it clear that some systems will allow one and not the other.
If you consider them identical, it's really just, I want to submit whatever to the system to link to it. Then that is the user story, right? Then so that doesn't matter. The fact that it's a claim doesn't matter. I mean, you're just talking about adding whatever with an identity to the system. That's your user story. Is that meaningful? That's a technical, it's not a user story.
No, one second. It is, okay, I see what you're saying now. That is a user story and it's a different one. I'm saying I want to submit whatever to the system with a definite intended type, and there's the subcase with the definite intended type of good claim, which is the one user story we are interested in right now, and I agree with you. But what I'm saying is, when you say it's a different type, you seem to say that there's a intent of submitting good claim, and there's an intent of submitting unambiguous good claim, which are distinct, if I understand you well. And I'm saying, no, you always intend to if you're honest, and let's assume good faith here, you always intend to submit unambiguous, non-indexical good claim,
No.
but in some cases, it will be found that you're not as unambiguous as you thought you were, and then the user story forks downstream.
Unambiguous, sure, but non-indexical, definitely not. There's a major use case where you want to add indexical claims and you just want to include the source of the claim.
No.
And the main use case is not there so that other people can link to it. And that's a different type of claim.
Okay. Yeah, there I will agree with you. You may want to put an indexical claim. But what I'm saying is, okay, that's a different story. That is indeed, but I thought you were trying to make the difference between non-indexical and non-indexical.
It's so much harder. See, what I'm saying here essentially is your candidate claim, most likely, if you want to support a system where you submit some candidates, why not submit all of those in the article you write as indexical claims, which you then improve and try to link to usable claims. So you have both for each link in your article, you have the indexical claim and the accepted claim. But the use case is still that you're trying to find the usable claim or whatever we're calling it for each of the indexical claims. And then the original submission might just be an indexical claim, and those will pretty much always be instantly accepted. There is no.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. I like that. I like that.
And that's why the domain type is so important. It's not about, you need to understand the user story to see what you're doing. If the user story is having something that people can add to, then structurally linkable should probably be a property. That means that, yes, maybe.
Right. Okay, but of course, then I do still say you want to, but let me put it this way: the known indexical claim. So I know it's not good, but I'm still submitting it. I'm submitting it not as a candidate, but as a work in progress, which is a bit different than a candidate, because I still want it ultimately to be accepted good claim. Yes.
I think that's, to me, what makes it meaningful. Yeah, because that's I mean, that is the goal here.
Yeah, and I think we all
that is a big ask. It is very hard to make non-indexical claims
and unambiguous non-indexical claims.
Well, and unambiguous, for that reason alone, I wouldn't make part of this user story.
I see what you're saying, but what we're both saying is it's a big ask. That means people have to be able to enter something that may not fulfill the absolute best criteria, maybe the non-indexical, but certainly not the unambiguous, because progressive formalization, because all of this, we want to be able to enter not good enough objects, give them an identity while we're working on them, maybe externally linked to them, and that's what I'm saying, and then see them evolve into refined, and at some point non-indexical, and at some point minimally ambiguous so far.
Probably all of these are different domain
At the end of that, formalization is accepted, or is accepted some fuzzy boundary in between?
I think accepted, there's many accepted,
that.
There's accepted as, don't forget it's always accepted as, it's accepted as non-indexical, accepted as non-ambiguous, accepted as formal eventually, because that's another step, yes?
Ideally, I think we can go from an indexical claim to a context-free, or what we call usable claim, or well, that's what I intended, to go to a canonical claim, etc.
Right.
That's the process, but these are three different domain types. It's not about the whole problem with the discussions the past years has always been like what is accepted or rejected or good or structured. It depends on the specific user story. If you like split them up and you have different criteria in different stages of the process and you give them different entities and even different layers in the system you implement, divide and conquer.
No, now I understand what you're trying to say, and I really got it wrong. I thought you said because we have different stages downstream, which is what I was arguing, these need to be different user stories. But yeah, no, it's not why. It's because the intent, I'm saying the intent is not different because you always have the ultimate intent in head, and you do. But
I do, but that's a different domain type for me. Whereas
no, what I'm saying is, okay, let me put it this way. If you put in an indexical, if you put in the ideal claim.
but what is an ideal claim?
I mean, having all the qualities. You know, it's non-indexical, it's formal, it's canonical, it's ideal. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, but ideal for one specific user story, which you probably are referring here to the canonical claim in the CDL.
Yeah. So if you put in an ideal claim, it's so that people can support and oppose a usable claim, blah, 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 as you have in user story 1. Obviously, that's your intent for an ideal claim. And obviously, if you put a rotten indexical.
But that's not my
no, I'm
that's
making
not this
point.
user story, right? It's to be very clear, an ideal claim is not at all the user story here. Even more, I want to be able to have like a subpar horrible claim as long as it's non-indexical, so that everyone linking to it or everyone using that, it becomes highly visible. Hey, this is a rotten claim.
No,
I don't care that it's and it needs to become visible to everyone linking to it that it is ambiguous, etc. That's the point.
What I'm saying is, let's say there's the ideal claim and the rotten claim, the one that's indexical and blah, blah, blah. So in both cases, you want it to get into the system so that people can argue for and against it. That's the ultimate intent. But it's true that in the case of the rotten claim, and if you're aware it's a rotten claim, there's another so that it can be improved in the system into a good enough claim to have
more meaningful discussion or something.
More meaningful discussions. So, but the ultimate intent is the same, and that's why I'm saying it's the same user story. But you're saying there is an intermediate intent of improvement, and that's why it's a different user story. And that's what I was not getting because I was focusing on the ultimate intent, which is the same. But I'm assuming we're not speaking about the person putting spam, right? We're speaking about somebody.
No, that's exactly the minimum cutoff point that we have with claim.
Yeah.
And I think there's another intermediate cutoff point, which is exactly that. It's not about ambiguity, and we have that. We have defined it in good claim, which is more about being able to talk about in different contexts and being able to improve. Actually, is the use case if needed.
Right. So I think we need the improvement user story. Really, that's what I'm getting out of this.
But that, to my opinion, builds on top of first having something to improve, which I would call a context-free claim.
I think that it will be easier to have the conversations about the improvement where we can contrast the user stories. Let me submit that, even in the work in progress section.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
I mean, that was the point of listing multiple user stories that all use claim, just to make clear that they're different claims.
Yeah, let me take a stab now and let's call it a day.
Yeah, that's what I was
also
saying.
have to go eat dinner.
Yeah. Same here.
By the way, I configured the whole automatic YouTube uploading.
Yeah, I saw.
So there will be some Slack messages posted with instructions for everyone. I hope it works out. That's the first time. Let's see what happens.
Thanks for setting all of that up, Felix. It's very useful.
Yeah, I mean, like, thank me. I'm thanking myself because then I don't have to do it anymore.
Well, thank you for doing it yourself before.
Really, so that my readers can improve it.
Yeah, looking forward to my excuse tomorrow. I cannot make it, but I hope I can take a picture.
Yeah, I need to pack for Belgium, so I might not be able. Well, I'm gonna try, but I might be busy. I'll see tomorrow. Okay, see you all. I think I'll write up meeting notes tomorrow morning. I don't feel like it today.
Okay.
That was my first stab, and let's see what to be reviewed on line 9.
Perfect.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.